This is how you repair the 2006 Hyundai Sonata power door lock actuators. Usually the motor inside the actuator wears and all four of your power locks will go out. This is the fourth door I've done, so I think I'm pretty good at doing this now, so I'll just show everyone how to do it. To get started, you need to remove this outer door panel, which is under these cap and screws here, here, and then there's one right below the speaker that's not covered up. So let's do that. Okay, after you get these screws out, here, and then one on the inside, before you start pulling at the trim of the door, you want to make sure you get this plastic piece out. Otherwise, you'll destroy your door handle. And if you're doing the front doors, there's just an extra screw down here. And then there's two here instead of one. Just the difference. Now, once you get the screws out, there are some pop tabs that hold the rest of the thing on. If you don't care about your car's interior, you can use a screwdriver. But if you do, you can use a pry tool. But basically, you just want to come on, start to kind of just get it coming in a few spots. And then give it a good pull. And then once most of the bottom pops out, it'll actually lift below the window right here in this, I don't know, little seal thing right here. One more tap. There you go. Okay, now once it's off, it's still going to be fixed from the wires on the inside. So don't pull at it too hard. You want to, right now, leave the wires that go to the window button in for 1 second. So once that comes off, it should give you a little bit more space, and you can see there are two of these on the front doors, but there's these holes. And what you want to do is open this up. I just pull the whole thing out. There's a hole. You want to lower the window so that a bolt matches up with that hole. So that's why you got to leave this attached. So turn the car on and lower it down. As you can see, the screw is visible. So now you can go ahead and completely disconnect your door panel. Throw that in there for now. Alright, so what you got here is another panel that holds the seal for to keep the inside weatherproof. So there are quite a few bolts that go around the inside of this. But first you need to remove the interior door handle. I've actually already been on this door replacing it with a pick and part actuator that did not work, so I have to do this one again, which is why I saved it for the last one. But go ahead and cut these. It's just, I think, to dampen the noise of it rattling, and just tape them back on. It's too much of a pain in the ass to actually get it all the way unseated because they're glued and try to get it all the way back on. It's just not worth your time. So I just tape these. You can try it yourself, but you'd spend a lot of time on it. So just remove this screw here, and it's similar on the front door, and do that. Once you got this unscrewed, you just pop these tabs back and then fish out this ball and cylinder thing to completely release the door handle. So if I can do that with one hand. Now I'm gonna do it too. Perfect. Okay, that's removed. Now I'm just gonna untape these, or you would have to cut them down. I just cut them down the length of it and pull these off. Okay, here's the hard part now. If it's the front door, it's actually slightly easier. You'll see two of these holes kind of spaced out here, and you just need to loosen those bolts a couple turns and the window will pop right out. But with this thing, I found out you have to completely remove this screw and then push the bushing in that's pinching the glass, and then have another person, if they're available, to pull the window up. So I'm gonna get this screw out and show what you mean. If you look, once you remove the screw, there's a slot. You want to get a chisel or a screwdriver about that size and push into it while at the same time pulling up at the glass. It's not easy, especially if it's been seated before, but I've unseated it once before, so I'm hoping it's a little easier. After some twisting and pulling, I got the glass pulled up all the way. You're going to want to tape it down so it doesn't fall in because nothing is holding it in place anymore. It is raining, so this is not ideal, but the show must go on. As you can see, it is free from the mechanism, the power window mechanism. And now all you got to do is pull, well, not all, but pull out all these bronze colored bolts around the perimeter and go ahead and do that. Try not to laugh, but because it's raining or slightly raining, I didn't want to tape anything because it's just going to come off. So I just used these old rubber slippers, and that's not going anywhere. So that's just well enough that it won't fall into the frame of the door. Yeah. Okay, in the garage now. Once you get these bolts removed, don't pull at this panel yet because it's attached to the actual door lock actuator, which is right here. You want to remove these three, I don't even know what to call them, star bolts. And you also have to remove the door handle. So I'm going to remove that door handle first. You got to pop this little cover off. And it actually helps if you remove this sticker to see, but it's actually a little different on the front door. It's much easier. This is right here on the front door. And yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. You can see the bolt, it's pretty far in there and it's really easy to drop down here. If you do, it's fine when you're taking it apart because you're gonna be able to get down there anyway. But especially when you're putting it back together, make sure not to drop that bolt down there. All right, with that bolt removed, you might need an extension. This will pop off. It takes a little force, but it does eventually. Next thing is to remove the door handle. So you just want to pull it towards the door frame. And it just kind of pops out, and then wiggle it out. Next, there's these seals that kind of weather protect the inside of the car. Just remove those. And then you want to remove this screw right here. It's just a little Phillips. With everything removed now, I'm going to finally actually take out the bolts that hold the door lock actuator, which are these 3 star bolts. All right, here's the tricky part. With these bolts removed, everything is free to pull this panel out. The problem is the assembly for the door lock actuator is pretty big. So it's a big mass here that overhangs into the door frame itself. There's also the lower rails that hold the power window. It kind of, you can see this goes continuously down in here. So you got to do kind of a weird wiggling maneuver. And there's also wires that are holding it in. So I like to go up and then pull out on here, and the whole thing should come. I can't really get it on video because I don't have the cameraman, but I'm gonna try. So, yeah, as you can see, that gets caught down there. There's a wire, and that whole assembly has to come out towards the front of the car, meaning this way. So I'm gonna do that. I think I was having issues. There's a few alignment pins. This one was popped in. So make sure you get all those kind of popped out. And also this seal is kind of like a dispensable gasket type stuff, so it's pretty sticky, but it'll stay together if you pull it off. But when the first time you pull it off, it's pretty much glued to the frame. So now with that, we can go up, get that out. Now this whole, it's gonna be tough. This whole assembly is what you're trying to look for, and careful with those wires. So you want to come back, boom, boom. Alright, try not to pinch that too much. Okay, so you can see what exactly came off. This is what goes on the inside of the door for the exterior door. And then this is the whole, disconnect that with that little paperclip looking thing. Alright. So, this actually is really simple. They're just kind of little push tabs that are holding this in. These right here. Alright. And then, all right, that's off. Now you just want to feed these long things through this little grommet here. The grommets that come in on the outside. Those are kind of tricky to get off, but I'm gonna do that real quick. All right, now here's the actual actuator completely pulled out with the leads for the interior handle. It looks like a lot, but it comes apart pretty easily at the beginning. Separate this hinge right here. So do that with one hand. What I would do for a cameraman. Okay. That's pretty much as far as that part's gonna come apart. This clip right here, this is also pretty fragile, by the way, so be careful. Pinch this and that comes out. And lastly, this assembly right here is mounted on these kind of rails right here, so it just slides this way, but there's a few tabs here and here, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna do that because it's too hard to do with one hand. All right, now here is where you can make the decision of buying 4 of these, because most likely all 4 are worn out, which will run you a pretty penny, or you can fix these, which is not easy but doable, which I will continue to do inside. All right, well, with the actuator on the kitchen table, you're gonna wanna lay down something because it's gonna get a little messy. These things are definitely not designed to be opened. They look pretty much the same on all the doors. On the rear doors, though, they have a child lock. So that complicates things, and you need to pull this pin right here out a few millimeters. And on all of them, you need to pull this pin out a few millimeters because they set into the other half of this enclosure. There are some just snap clips. For instance, here, where are the other ones? Here and here. They take a little wiggling to get off, but if you break them, it's not that big of a deal. I broke quite a few, and I just end up gluing it back together anyway, since I don't plan on opening it again. The other thing is, so when this is 2 halves, when this half comes down, when the factory, it had these studs that came up, and then there was like a piece that melted these things down. So it looks like it's some sort of rivet or pin, but it's not. It's solid all the way through. So you just have to cut these, and I'll show you what I do to hold them back down. They're really not even that necessary. It's honestly more so so you can't break into it. So I just use a pair of like flush cutters used for like circuit board when you're cutting the leads, and snap these. There's quite a few of them around the perimeter. And then, like I said, you got to pull this pin back a little bit and this pin back a little bit, and then wiggle and pry at these little tabs, and this whole thing will come up. And I'll show you that in a sec. See here, I pulled this one back a few millimeters. Probably didn't need to do that much. And this one, and you can see I snapped the head on these. You can't really see them that well, but you just need to make sure that it's able to fit through the hole instead of the little overhang on the head of them. And now I just gotta pry up these little tabs and get this thing to come up. Alright, as you can see, I'm already getting a good crease here. I snapped that one, but oh well. And just keep working around the perimeter of it. And up here, and there's alright, it took a little work, but the top half comes off, and you can see what I mean by these pins. This pin right here, and where is that? Well, anyway, there's another pin that comes out here that I pulled too far back. Matches up with this hole here and this little eyelet here. It's a pretty complicated looking mechanism. If this is the driver's side door with the keyhole, there will be a key. You can tell they use the same mold because the key would go here. And if you're on the front side without the door lock or the child's lock, all this right here would be missing. So it's more or less the same. I've never seen any of these actually of the gears broken and stuff. It's always the motor gets weakened over time. And you can see the motor right here. This is just popped into little contacts right here. Over time, these are brush motors, so the carbon builds up on the commutator, and it slows down to the point where they're too weak. I've tried cleaning one of these before and putting it back together, and it did not work. So I ended up just buying a motor that I found that looked similar on Amazon. I'll put a link on where to find these. The hardest part of this is getting this gear onto this shaft, and I've tried a few ways, but to be honest, the best way is torch this, pry it off. You're going to destroy this motor, but it's useless anyway, and then drill it out so it's a little wider, because it's got these studs on it that make it pretty much impossible to fit on a new motor without breaking it, and then just put a itsy bitsy bit of super glue on the shaft and just hold it down, and that worked pretty well for me. Long term with the super glue, who knows, but I mean, this car is already 13 years old, so I'm not too worried. So without further ado, I'm gonna work on getting this shaft off. First thing is, because I'm gonna heat it, and I don't want to breathe in combusted lubricant, I'm gonna clean this with isopropyl alcohol as well as I can before I heat it up. So just go in there and get all the nooks and crannies out with paper towel and some isopropyl alcohol, and then I'll heat it up. Alright, I cleaned this one up. For some reason, the other ones had a lot more grease on them, so there really wasn't any grease on there, which is not a good thing, but made it easier to clean up. So I can't find my torch, so don't do this, but so you want to drill this out with a 5/64 drill bit very slowly and keep pressing it on until you are sure that it fits perfectly and is extending into this bracket here. And once that's done, you can slide it on. Then you want to slide it on partially and then put a little bit of super glue on and then push it on to its final placement. Do not put super glue on the whole thing, because it won't be able to close all the way and it'll get stuck before you are able to push it down all the way. So just put super glue in there and then like that, and it should hold. Alright, with the new motor in, you might just want to grab a little bit of grease here and then put it in the new worm gear. And once that's done, just clamshell it back together. Alright, we got it all hooked up. Now to do the test. The cylindrical one should move back and forth when I hit the door lock. It's working. Alright, now just need to assemble it. Clamp this down before I glue some of these studs, because you can tell they pop open a little bit. Alright, got all the plastic bits back together on the actuator for the outdoor door handle, and then I plugged it back into this little frame thing, and just gonna put this grommet in here for all the wire harnesses, and now you just got to guide it back in, kind of the reverse of how you got it out. Also, I like to leave this screw here because it's too much of a pain in the ass to fish through this little hole. If you have a really long extension, it helps when you're putting it in, but I find this is easier. So yeah, you want to get this in first by coming out to the left, and then you want to get it over that pulley to finish it, and just make sure all the wires are tucked away. So I'm gonna do that real quick. All right, pretty easy to get in, much harder to get out. Before you put down all the screws, it's easier to line up all the things for the door handle first. So you just want to make sure these actually will. Careful with that screw, but this will actually click into place like that. and it should line up. Yep, those holes are lined up. So I like to get this part in first before battening down all the those brass bolts on that panel. So I'm gonna get the rest of this door handle assembly done first. So starting with this Phillips screw, and then sticking the door handle in, and then putting that end cap on, or the key slot if you're on the driver's side front door, and then bolt that in. Also, do not forget these gaskets. They just kind of snap in there just so they're easier to put the door handle on, and then they're kind of held in place by the door handle itself. And then put the door handle on and that final back piece. All right, door handle back together. Seems to be working fine. Now just put on these little cover things, and that sticker back there for completion. And then I'm going, I also gotta remember the child lock part. And then I'm gonna put the rest of this actuator back into place, the actual latch of the door. There is a little bit of this kind of rubber sealing. It can kind of get in the way, especially when you're taking apart the thing, so just make sure that's tucked away. Worst case scenario, you can cut it away. It's not that big of a deal if it's not there. And yeah, so put these bolts in and then put this cover over the child lock thing back. One little test I like to do before completely buttoning it up is make sure it works with the actual interior door handle. It has the power to move that. And if we try that, it is not working. Why is it not working? All right, a little weird. It was not working, but I know it's not the actuator because I just fixed the actuator. I flipped this upside down. See, the cylinder could really go in either way. I flipped it upside down from what I would think it would be because it's a little under a bit more tension than what I would thought would be the normal orientation. So this feels like it's upside down, but it's working now. So a little weird, but shouldn't be any issues going on. So now it's just time to button up all the brass bolts, put that window in, and put that panel on. So I'm going to start though with these grommets. I'm not sure how much you need these, but they are a bitch to put on these over these caps. You kind of have to work it with some pliers to get it really over. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. Got the interior panel all buttoned up. When you drop the window down, just be careful and make sure it goes all the way down because there is a hole in the glass for the screw to go through, so you got to make sure it's all the way seated before putting the screw in. Then it's the little Phillips in that little slot down there, and I reconnected this. I'm going to test the window. And it's working, so I just have to put the exterior panel on and we'll be done.